Yesterday, when we were giving you guys an update on the trucker protests that were happening across the country, this little anecdote slipped in through under the wire, and Trudeau was about to deliver his press conference and, for the first time since 1970, evoke the Emergencies Act. What that exactly meant, nobody really knew because, like I said there, it hasn't been done since 1970, and it was only done under an extreme circumstance where, under the October crisis, 1970, there was a cabinet minister who was abducted, and, we'll just go ahead and give you guys the update on this, because even still, this was 20 years before I was born, and I don't really know a whole bunch about it, so we're going to go ahead and give you a brief overview, and, we'll try and show you how this was still, this was a move even to evoke the act then. It wasn't even something that was fully supported because, well, we're going to see in a little bit, basically, it was just one of those things that was just simply focused on one province, and then it was a federalization of authoritarianism just in order to deal with one specific instance, and then at least you could justify it in the fact that, yeah, it was violent, it was bloody, and there was something that needed to be quashed really quickly, but now it's being evoked for honks? It's like, some of this stuff doesn't really make sense. So the October crisis refers to a chain of events that took place in Quebec in the fall of 1970, ergo the October. The crisis was the culmination of a long series of terrorist attacks perpetrated by the Front de Libération du Québec, the FLQ for non-francophones, a militant Quebec independence movement between 1963 and 1970. So it took a minute, but things really came to a head in 1970, by the way. On the 5th of October 1970, the FLQ kidnapped British Trade Commissioner James Cross in Montreal. Within the next 2 weeks, FLQ members also kidnapped and killed Quebec Minister of Immigration and Minister of Labour Pierre Laporte, Quebec Premier Robert Bourassa, and Montreal Mayor Jean Desprez called for federal help to deal with the crisis. Just federal help, okay? We could use some reinforcements to clear this stuff out. So, what did the Prime Minister at the time, by the way? Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, by the way. Does that last name sound familiar? Yes, it's his. At least was written down. It's Justin's father, okay? So, like father, like son. Deployed the armed forces and invoked the War Measures Act. It wasn't even called the Emergencies Act, okay? Because this was the last time it was invoked. Same basic statute. It just got a little bit of a revision in 1988. The only time it has been applied during peacetime in Canadian history. Well, I'm going to have to make a slight addendum to that one whenever you guys get around to it. So what necessitated the evocation of the War Measures Act? Well, between 63 and 70, FLQ were responsible for more than 200 bombings and dozens of robberies that left 6 people dead. Their targets included numerous mailboxes in Westmount, a wealthy Anglophone area of Montreal, several Canadian Armed Forces armories and facilities, the head of the Canadian Imperial Bank of Congress in Montreal, a federal government bookstore, McGill University, a residence of Montreal Mayor Jean Drapeau, the Provincial Department of Labor, and the Eaton's department store in downtown Montreal. In February 1969, FLQ bombing of the Montreal Stock Exchange, injured 27 people. So everything was all centered in Quebec, okay? In Montreal and Quebec City. That's it, okay? A lot of people were injured, okay? A lot of businesses and a lot of buildings were destroyed. But this was all centralized, okay? It was violent, sure, okay? But it was all within the confines of the borders of Quebec. So, in the fall of 1969, the remaining FLQ movement split into 2 distinct Montreal-based cells, the South Shore Gang, which became the Chunry cell, led by Paul Rose, and the other members of his brother, Jacques Rose, Bernard Lortie, and Francis Samard. The Liberation cell was led by Jacques Laconte, and a whole bunch of other idiots, and a bunch of fucking stupid bombing Frenchmen. Once they started to kidnap elected officials, then things got intense, obviously. So, ergo, the evocation of the order, which was met with, and what we're going to see here again, once it's invoked, people weren't necessarily all that supportive of the idea, okay? The federal response to the kidnappings, the two ministers that we mentioned in the beginning, was intensely controversial. Opinion polls showed that the majority of Canadians supported the federal cabinet's action, but invoking the War Measures Act was criticized by as excessive by Quebec nationalists and by civil libertarians throughout the country. A total of 497 individuals were arrested under both the War Measures Act and the Public Order Act, and were replaced as the War Measures Act on December 1st, and was in effect until the 30th of April, 1971. It's only supposed to be in effect, by the way, or at least the one that's currently in place, for 30 days. So just a little heads up on that one. 35 people were released and 62 were charged. So they rounded up nearly 500 people and they only charged 62 of them. Okay. And 32 of those were held without bail. Yeah, but they're terrorists and stuff, right? So they don't need to have civil liberties. Is that what we're doing here? Okay. In the spring of 1971, the Quebec government announced that it would pay up to $30,000 in compensation to roughly 100 people who were unjustly detained. But the opposition leaders at the time, Progressive Conservative leader Robert Stanfield, former Prime Minister John Diefenbaker, and NDP leader Tommy Douglas all voiced dissenting opinions in the House of Commons. Douglas, a longtime champion of civil liberties, and just compare and contrast this, right? Tommy Douglas, a pretty well-respected individual in Canadian federal politics for a very long time, okay? He was the leader of the NDP at the time. Now take a look at the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, okay, and what he's been doing, okay? Like, take a look here, okay, because we could have avoided all of this, okay, because remember, the stated intent of the truckers, okay, those evil terrorists that are down there, which now it's been escalated to, right? Obviously. But no, all they want is just an end of the mandates, and they could have just avoided invoking all of this shit and causing international chaos, because that's who's condemning all of this stuff. Everybody who has, I don't know, a pair of eyeballs and a fucking political pulse realize that this is the dumbest fucking thing Trudeau could have possibly done. But no, the Liberals and the NDP got together and decided that, yeah, a conservative motion that was on the table for us to just, you know what, fucking finally figure out how we're going to end all of these stupid mandates. Nah, we don't need to do that right now. What we need to do is we need to start labeling people just extremists and start seizing civil liberties, because, well, that's what the act invokes anyways. But we'll just, wrap this up like it says here. But Douglas, a champion of civil liberties, because you're apparently... he was at the time, and Jagmeet Singh, following in his footsteps, is the leader of the Canadian Workers' Party, the party that has socialist leanings, okay? And they're the ones that are siding with the Liberal government, okay? The Liberal Party, which who the fuck knows what they even stand for and what they ever did. And he said he likened the move using the same act that Justin Trudeau is right now, using a sledgehammer to crack a peanut, okay? But let's get back to the here and now, because I want to try to keep this at least, today a digestible length, but I know that's going to be impossible looking at all of the articles I have pulled up in anyways, but we're going to try, we're going to aim for this. So let's figure out what was said and to just try to decipher the bullshit, because that motherfucker with the quaff in the middle of the screen right there in front of his Canadian flags with his little fucking maple leaf podium, which one day he would love to have his face in front of, and he'd just like to get rid of that stupid anachronism of a flag that's behind him and then just have himself up there, old dear leader. Words cannot describe how disgusted I am at this. The Canadian federal government has declared a state of emergency due to the ongoing protests around COVID mandates and restrictions by truckers and their supporters. In the press conference on February 14th, Prime Minister said the protests aren't peaceful. Can you point to anybody who's not peaceful that you haven't either planted there or previously supported in the past? Can you go ahead and you can do that? No, okay, you can't. And are harming the economy like you, while measures are needed to strengthen law enforcement agencies. Why? On Friday, Ontario invoked a state of emergency to respond to the blockades. Okay, what did they do in order to do any of this? Nothing? Oh, okay, cool. Which blockades are you talking about? The one at the Ambassador Bridge that ended up getting all fixed before you invoked your Emergencies Act, which is needed to quell these different uprisings that are apparently happening across the country that can't be dealt with in a legal and proportional manner? No? Oh, okay. Cool. This was the responsible and necessary thing to do. But then I just thought I'd like to get in on this fun, and I'd like to federalize things further. Today, to continue building on these efforts, why they're working at the provincial and the municipal level. So why do you have to escalate things further? The federal government is ready to use more tools at its disposal to get the situation fully under control. And again, still, I haven't seen anything, because we've seen the people that are arrested, a la the FLQ bombings. What are they arrested for? Mischief. Okay, is anything in regards to like the actual blockades, the one on the Ambassador Bridge, because that must be the one that he's specifically referring to. Because again, if there's trucks still in Ottawa, are they really breaking the law? They've been there for 19 fucking days, for Christ's sakes, and you can't fucking point to anything there. You can't point to anything concrete that they're doing that's actually illegal, other than just saying they're illegal. Oh, okay, cool. Just because you say something doesn't make it true. Especially anything that comes out of the mouth of Trudeau, you can just go ahead and just assume it's going to be a bald-faced fucking lie. Trudeau said the application of the Emergencies Act will be limited in time. Really? I doubt it. I doubt it. And will be used in a targeted and proportionate fashion. That's why it federalizes so much shit. And we're going to get to the actual act, because I have that pulled up as well. But first and foremost, let's just get to what he had to say. Ugh, I'll say that through gritted teeth. He added that the act will be used to protect critical infrastructure, such as airports and cross-border crossings. Why airports? They're truckers. It's really, really, really hard, just in case you're unaware, it's really hard to fly an 18-wheeler on a passenger plane. Just saying. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland announced a number of measures to reduce funding to the protests. We might as well jump ahead to that one, because, yeah, that's a fucking, ain't this a bitch. Canada regulating crowdfunding platforms and cryptocurrencies under the Terrorist Financing Act. Oh, where did this magically prop up from? Why are you doing this? Oh, because crowdfunding was successful at raising a bunch of money for just a cause that you don't like. But if this was BLM, or if this was Antifa, or if this was one of those indigenous groups that you riled up by saying that there were mass graves under these residential schools and then never providing any proof of any of it fucking happening. No, of course not. But you know what? Trucker man bad, right? The Canadian federal government is now regulating crowdfunding platforms and cryptocurrencies, because that's always what's going to happen, okay? And for my cryptocurrency friends that are out there who know a hell of a lot more about this stuff than I do you guys know that there's a technology that's already been patented and that's already being ready for use, okay? We should expect those little mechanisms to be in the stores within the next decade or so. But do you know changing cryptocurrency into fiat currency, okay? Usable, dispensable currency. So using a Bitcoin, using a Dogecoin, using whatever kind of coin you can possibly have. And then in order to use it for like actual tangible things in real life, using it at a store, using it at a restaurant, using it at just a local eatery, whatever you do, whatever you want to use it in a store, okay? You know who owns that technology there in order to transfer the cryptocurrency to fiat currency in order to pay for it at the point of sale? MasterCard. Why is that significant? MasterCard was the one who pulls the strings, okay? They're the ones who deplatforms people from places like Patreon or places from PayPal. MasterCard just needs to make a phone call. We don't want this person on the platform, and then they get rid of them. It's always the banks. It's always the payment processors. We seen the banks yesterday, okay? There's another report. Couldn't really fit it in here anywhere today, but My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell with My Pillow, I'm going to be donating a bunch of pillows to the truckers and just say you guys need to go ahead and you need to hold the line. You guys are really doing God's work, and you can have a free pillow. It's got my patented fill and it's machine washable if you have the time to clean it, but it's really nice. You put it behind your head, it just fits perfectly in your cab. Yeah, his company bank account, yeah, it's getting terminated. So always the banks, it's always the payment processors. So just in case you think that cryptocurrency is the future, yeah, no, it's great. The blockchain works terrifically, okay? You'll be able to just accrue all the Bitcoin you want, you'll be able to accrue all the cryptocurrency you want, but if you can't exchange it for anything usable, anything from the real world, anywhere where you're going to need actual tangible funds, fuck off. You better make sure that you adhere to the rules and you stay in the good graces of the fucking payment processors. Just keep that in mind for a little bit. But yeah, this was Freeland's little addition to the press conference. The measures effectively broaden the scope of the anti-money laundering rules in the country and directs banks to freeze accounts of entities involved in protests not very specific on this one. This is another measure of the evocation of the Emergencies Act, by the way. You can put a freeze or you can seize, okay, the exact same shit, okay? Freeze or seize any bank accounts that are being seen to help or enable any of these illegal blockades that are so illegal. Remember, these are illegal blockades. Apparently, why? They're illegal. Oh, okay, I see. The illegal blockades have highlighted the fact that crowdfunding platforms and some of the payment service providers they use are not fully captured under the Proceeds of Crimes and Terrorist Financing Act. They were allowed to help these protesters that we don't like, okay? They were allowed to help causes that we're not terribly fond of. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to go ahead and supersede any of their authority. Okay, thanks, got it. Freeland said in the beginning Monday, all crowdfunding platforms and their payment service providers are required to register in the country's National Finance Intelligence Agency and report large and suspicious transactions. What is large? What is suspicious? Okay, so again, give, send, go. They're not to blame for this one, but that's the justification they're using. They said, oh, give, send, go. You guys need to bend to the will like GoFundMe did, and you need to go ahead and you need to freeze that because we don't like those fundraisers you're doing. And then them saying, fuck you, you don't have any jurisdiction over us. Okay, cool. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to regulate anything, and we'll see how far this goes because, again, you're trying to regulate an out-of-country business. It's fucking absurd. So now this is just another way to kind of backdoor in another form of internet censorship because, okay, if they have to report any sort of suspicious donations, whatever the fuck that means, really, I guess we'll have to see that when it comes out in writing, or I'd imagine it's probably just going to be large and suspicious. If they don't do that, they'll just be blocked, a la CCP internet. Imagine that. Companies whose trucks are using the blockades will have their corporate accounts frozen and their insurance suspended. And I'd imagine probably once the mass arrests that are apparently going to start happening, okay, which are allowed during using this Emergencies Act, by the way, they're just going to take down the names and then they're just going to start freezing accounts of people that they arrest. You just fucking watch. It's going to happen. This comes after GoFundMe on February 4th said they won't be giving the $10 million raised to support the truckers protesting the mandates to the organizers anymore, saying that it is instead work with the organizers and fund to establish charities verified by GoFundMe. But then they said that they were going to be refunding stuff, but then that's still in the courts right now, and I haven't seen if any of the organizers went to court and what they've been figuring out today when it comes to freezing out the give, send, go. But again, if it's just all been federally seized or freezed, whatever it is, tough to really say what's going to be going on there. Maybe that lawsuit ended up getting thrown out. But that was Christina Freeland's part. She's just going to be regulating everything going forward because terrorism, right? The premiers of Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Quebec stated that they do not support the Prime Minister's use of the Act. And again, Alberta dropping most of their mandates, and I'm pretty sure everything is going to be done by the end of the month. Saskatchewan doing the exact same thing. Manitoba, I haven't seen anything in writing, but I'd imagine it's probably following along the same lines. And for Quebec, yeah, they're getting rid of their vaccine passport, okay? And tomorrow, okay, you don't need vaccine passports to enter liquor stores, which is kind of weird why they'd single that out. And then the large box stores, that was the other insane restriction that they had in place. You're not allowed to go into any big building, okay? You're not allowed to go into a Costco or a Best Buy or a Walmart or anything like that, but that was in place, okay? And then as soon as all this weird shit started to happen, then Francois Legault decided to walk that back, effective tomorrow. But then the rest of the mandates are going to be dropped on March 14th. Health officials in Quebec have announced that the province will drop vaccine passport requirements for bars, restaurants, and other public spaces starting March 14th. According to Health Minister Christian Dubé, the situation in Quebec hospitals has proved so that the measures can be gradually eased. Of course, right? Because it wasn't any of the pressure that happened from the truckers. No. If you cite any of them, you're probably being affiliated with terrorists and all that fucking goofy shit, right? So you're just gonna have to say the science has changed and we'll be able to just skate free of this and wash our fucking hands of the situation. Exactly what everybody fucking figured to begin with, right? They're all gonna get away with this shit. And Jason Kenney condemned that. We read that yesterday. Scott Moe, the exact same thing. Heather Stephenson, Premier of Manitoba. Francois Legault, same gimmick. But Brian Peckford, okay, former premier of Newfoundland, who is acting as a spokesperson for the Freedom Convoy. Oh, okay, so I guess he was that politician who was working with the Convoy in the background. And by the way, Brian Peckford, the last living member, okay? The last premier who helped in the creation of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms for Canada. You know, the Article of Confederation when we finally broke away from Canada. Or, I'm sorry, when we finally became, you know, Canada proper, separate from the United Kingdom. You know, that tiny piece of paper. He's the last person alive who was actively working on that and signed it into federal law. He has some lawsuits that are out there as well. Without going into that and tangenting off into his lawsuit that's out there, he has a conversation online with Jordan Peterson where he announced said lawsuit. And he also had some spicy anecdotes about Pierre Trudeau as well and his lust for federalizing just about everything at the drop of a hat. It was very much apparent when they were drawing that up as well. So, you know what? Hey, it fucking definitely runs in the family. But with all of that goofy shit said, let's move on, because once that finally goes to the courts, we'll probably have to revisit it anyway. So the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, which is providing legal representation for the organizers, said the statement ahead of the declaration would be, it would immediately file a court application seeking to overturn such a declaration. But again, it's like going to your dad in order to get a different answer than what your mom just gave you. It's just not gonna, it's gonna fall on deaf ears. Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau used the War Measures Act in 1970 to deal with the violence, kidnapping, and murder of the terrorists in Quebec. Today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is considering using Emergencies Act, well, he is, to deal with the bouncy castles and ball hockey, pretty much. Peaceful protesters who feed the homeless, shovel snow, pick up garbage, dance in the streets, play street hockey, wave Canadian flags, sing the national anthem, and set up bouncy castles for children do not seriously endanger the lives, health, or safety of Canadians, which is what the younger Trudeau said yesterday during his press conference. Nor do these peaceful activities, such as the proportion of or nature as to exceed the capacity or authority of a province to deal with. Interim Conservative leader Candice Bergen said her party will be looking at what the Liberal government is proposing and evaluate the rationale, but I wouldn't put any stock in anything that she's doing because, you know, she's just the same type of fucking wishy-washy politician that Aaron O'Toole and Andrew Scheer was, just has slightly larger tits than Aaron O'Toole. What is this act? Anyways, so we're right here on the Government of Canada site. I tried to see if there was any screenshots of this beforehand to see if anything was changed, but this is apparently, okay, what's been on the books at least for a minute here. So let's see what we're dealing with here and for potentially how long, because we don't know, okay? Emergencies Act, which became law in 1988, is a federal law that can be used in the federal government in the event of a national emergency. The act contains a specific definition of national emergency. Let's see if it meets that. Highly doubt it. That makes clear how serious the situation needs to be before the act can be relied upon. A national emergency is an urgent, temporary, or critical situation that seriously endangers the health and safety of Canadians, or that seriously threatens the ability of the Government of Canada to preserve the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of Canada. I don't know, doesn't really seem to fit with a bunch of people walking the streets of the capital just yelling freedom intermittently. I'm just saying. It must be a situation that cannot be effectively dealt with by the provinces and territories. Again, the Ontario Provincial Police, with help of the RCMP and local law enforcement agencies, were able to effectively disperse the biggest blockade, okay? They were able to disperse that without the help of the federal government enacting the Emergencies Act. That just goes to show you right there on the face of it, the one that was, I guess, seriously threatening the sovereignty or the territorial integrity and the security. But I like that little hanger-on clause there at the end. By any other law of Canada. Because remember, we've been hearing from the activist politicians that are out there, oh, this is an illegal occupation in Ottawa. It's illegal, it's illegal, it's illegal. If it's breaking the law, if it's breaking any law, why has it been going on for the better part of, or for over 3 weeks now? If you can point to any one law that they are breaking, why isn't all of this over? Oh, you can't. So you have to make it up, and you have to get more vicious in your tactics. I understand. There are 4 types of emergencies that can be declared under the Emergencies Act. A public welfare emergency. Well, again, if the protest that's there in Ottawa specifically is making the situation better for people, like crimes down, homeless are in a better situation, they're being better fed than the shelters that the federal and local government put up anyways and fund. Okay, so just once again showing you that the private sector can do better than anything that the government can. So public welfare emergency, I don't really know. A public order emergency. Okay, so because Ottawa announced a state of emergency and then Ontario proper announced a state of emergency, is that a public order emergency? Is that what you're trying to cite? Maybe an international emergency? Oh, they're blocking the border at several points. Okay. Is that an emergency? Or have you even tried to negotiate with these people? Which is another thing that you've seen as well. The moment that they get conversation from both sides, it seems like they tend to reach an agreement. Or a war emergency. Again, it doesn't apply. The Emergencies Act can be invoked to grant temporary, additional, and necessary powers to the federal government when provincial, territorial, and federal tools are no longer sufficient to deal effectively with the serious issues being faced, such as the ability to make orders or regulations that are believed on reasonable grounds, really, to be necessary to respond to the issues at hand. There's, wow, beautiful vagaries we have there. And safety risks as well as economic issues. Oh, okay. Oh, they were stopping trade. They were stopping commerce from happening at the border. Again, it was dispersed and it was, very successful for the better part of a week on that bridge, and you couldn't point to anything illegal that they were doing until you just decided it was illegal. Because what? Somebody's feelings were hurt? For example, when necessary for dealing with a public order emergency, the federal government can issue or adopt temporary orders and regulations. Here's where it gets fun. Regulating and prohibiting public assemblies, including blockades, and other lawful advocacy, protests, or dissent. So if something's lawful and you just don't like it, you can go ahead and evoke this order, you can go ahead and evoke this act, rather, and just say it's illegal, because now it is. Regulating the use of specified property, including goods to be used with respect to the blockade. So anybody helping out, okay, so goods and services, okay, anybody aiding and abetting these now all of a sudden criminals, because I don't know why they are. If you're doing that, now the federal government can go ahead and seize that from you. Designating and securing places where blockades are to be prohibited. So wherever they decide that your assembly is illegal, now we can get rid of it because now it's illegal. Directing specified persons to render essential services to relieve impacts on blockades or Canada's economy with compensation. So yeah, that right there is forced labor. Not kidding. Okay, specified person, directing specified persons to render essential services, which is now apparently not truck drivers, but tow truck operators. They're now going to be essential to clearing these blockades. So yeah, no, you'll be compensated by the federal government. Your actual wage, I don't really know, but you'll be compensated. Don't worry about it. Remember, these are the same people who've been screeching for a long time, okay? That, the right wing, oh my god, they're just descending into tyranny, oh my god. But now you literally have it. You have people in the government telling other people what they have to do under penalty of law. Not a peep out of them. Authorizing or directing specified financial institutions to render essential services to relieve the impacted blockades, including by regulating and prohibiting the use of property to fund or support the blockades. So that's just more of the same from before. Measures with respect to the authorizing of the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, to enforce municipal and provincial laws by means to incorporate by reference. That's literally like sending in the FBI, just for my American friends, just as an allegory there. What you're doing is federalizing local and provincial government, giving jurisdiction to the RCMP to criminalize local bylaws. And finally, the imposition of fines or imprisonment for contravening on any of the measures declared under the public order emergency, or whatever else we want to draw up and throw in this order of emergency. Cool. Democratic safeguards, parliamentary oversight, accountability, and respecting Canadians' individual rights that we've taken away from you because this is a time of emergency. Apparently, the Emergencies Act has stringent built-in protections which ensure democratic oversight and accountability with respect to the way that the government exercises its power under the Act. I'd love to see that in action, but haven't seen fuck all about it so far. The act also requires consultation with provinces and territories before the declaration is issued, which we've seen 4 premiers come out and say, we don't need this. Okay? So them saying that they don't want Trudeau to invoke this. Oh, well, he talked with them. Okay, well, they said that they didn't want it. Yeah, but who cares what they have to say? They're just all out west anyways. But what about Quebec? Shut up. They're just a bunch of terrorists anyways. Unless the provinces and territories cannot be adequately consulted without unduly jeopardizing the effectiveness of the proposed action. So you could just go ahead and disregard their consultation. Hey, listen, we left a message and they didn't want to return it in a timely fashion. And listen, these people, man, they're just idling in the streets. There's nothing we can do, no time to spare. Once a declaration is issued, a report must be tabled in Parliament within 7 sitting days explaining the consultations that have taken place. So still 6 days and counting. Okay, I wouldn't anticipate anything before the weekend, by the way. Impact of the emergencies on individual rights. Here's where it gets fun and scary at the same time. With the Emergencies Act, when the Emergency Act is invoked, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms continues to protect individual rights, unless, of course, you want private property, your own personal autonomy, your right to free speech, and your right to free assembly. Unless you want those, then they've just been, rescinded anyways, because now the government will tell you what your human rights are. As the government takes necessary steps to safeguard the safety and well-being of Canadians, we're just going to go ahead and restrict your rights and freedoms in order to ensure your rights and freedoms. What? Excuse me, what? In deciding on measures to take, the government must respect constitutionally protected rights and freedoms. Yeah, okay. We didn't like the protests, so now we criminalize the protests. What? Including the rights of citizens to enter Canada and the right to life, liberty. They must ensure the right to liberty. Okay. And security of the person, which now they're going to start arrests at any moment. Okay. As well as Canada's obligations under international law. Those international leaders who are out there who are now personally condemning him for really stupid actions. Okay, cool. The charter allows the government to balance the rights of the individuals with the interests of society. Oh, okay, cool. So we can do this because most society, right? Okay, because a couple of piss-stinking cat ladies are up there in their apartment building saying, we don't like the honking. The honking is stopped. Where limits on guaranteed rights and freedoms can be justified in a free and democratic society. Well, that's just totally out the window. Specifically, Section 1 of the Charter allows the government to put limits on rights and freedoms. If those limits are set out in law, sure, we'll just go ahead and disregard all of this, right? Because it's an emergency. Pursue an important goal which can be justified in a free and democratic society. Well, you kind of fail at that one. And pursue that goal in a reasonable and proportionate manner. Yeah, because everybody's been able to properly deal with this situation. So now you're just, once again, as a wise man once said, trying to crack a peanut with a sledgehammer. Oh, we'll just read this for completionist's sake. This means that during a public order emergency, as defined by the Emergencies Act, the government must only take action that are reasonable and proportionate response to the risks to a safety of Canadians. What risk are the truckers actually imposing on Canadians? Not just Ottawans, or Ottonians? Residents of Ottawa. Outside of that, what are the truckers doing? And even still, okay, like if you're actually down there, and remember, Trudeau and Freeland, they haven't actually been down there to talk with any of the protesters. They haven't seen any of the stuff. All they know is what they're being told, what they're being fed by the government. Do you know that outside of Wellington Street, which I learned that's that street right in front of the Parliament, and that's the only one that's like perfectly blocked off, okay? Outside of that, every other street has access, has at least one, if not two open lanes going each way. Okay, emergency access to literally emergency vehicle access to literally everything. All the businesses, oh my God, they've been closed. For what reason exactly? And why are they closed anyways? And if all of these restaurants are being kept closed by the government at the discretion because you don't want to be, aiding any of the truckers that are out there, is that being closed because of the truckers, or is it being closed because of the government? Just think of the past 2 years, who's been responsible for the closures. But no, it's all of these goddamn dirty protesters. So in view of the exceptional nature, there are additional stringent safeguards built into the Act to ensure democratic oversight and the accountability during an emergency. The following procedural steps act as checks and balances under the law. Let's see how many of these will get disregarded. A declaration: the Government of Canada must formally decree an emergency effective the day that it's made. Theoretically, Trudeau did that. Okay, government tables a motion in Parliament. They'll get around to that. Don't worry about it. Parliament votes. Both the House of Commons and the Senate must vote on the motion. It is the only place where it might end up hanging out for a minute, because the Senate is, at least for the time being, they were the ones responsible for killing off that Internet Censorship Act, which was trying to go through in fall of 2021. That wasn't that long ago, but they were the ones who rendered that moot. So if either the House of Commons or the Senate does not vote in favor of the declaration, it is revoked that very day. So again, these acts, yeah, okay, Trudeau called it, and he's just allowed to enforce that, okay? Even still, even though everything hasn't been voted on, it's still going on right now. He just has this free pass now until all this stuff goes through. The Senate or House of Commons are recalled if necessary if either the Senate or the House of Commons is not sitting at the time the declaration is issued. They are right now. I'm not too sure about the Senate, but at least the House of Commons is right now. Government issues and tables orders and regulations. Any government action taken to respond to the emergency must be tabled in both the House of Commons and the Senate 2 days after the government issues the orders or regulations. So they have to... Okay, cool. So I guess we have at least a little bit more of a time frame here. So at least by the end of business tomorrow, they need to have that order in the House of Commons. Okay. This ensures that the government's actions are transparent. From the Trudeau government, you know, the guy who has more ethics complaints and violations that just get, oh, I'm sorried, out of the public consciousness, 4 times over. Is it going to be transparent? Okay, sure. And the government will be accountable before Parliament for its actions. The Parliamentary Review Committee is established, a special joint committee from both the House of Commons and the Senate must be established to review the government's actions under the Act on the ongoing basis if it ends up passing. Parliament exercises power at any time. The Senate or House of Commons can review potentially revoke the declaration in any of the order. The regulations are under the Act. The declaration expires or can be extended. This is what I made mention to earlier. The declaration expires after 30 days unless an extension is confirmed within the specific timelines by both the House of Commons and the Senate. So it drops dead at 30 days. It can be revoked before that, and it also can be extended in perpetuity because, as you've seen before, when it was still called the War Times Act, the only other time that it was invoked outside of wartime measures, and the only other times before that was during World War I and World War II. So that, just letting you guys know, that's the severity of this situation. Invoking this act involved 2 world wars and somebody an organization blowing up buildings in fucking Quebec. And now it's some Peterbilts in the street. And then last but not least, an inquiry held after the emergency has ended. The Emergencies Act requires the government to hold an inquiry, which, you know, in the federal government right now, especially with everything in place, just amounts to a fucking fart in the wind. Where did this come from all of a sudden after everything was being handled about as well as you think, or about as well as it could? Biden was the one who placed the phone call. Okay, if it's not bad enough that he's fucking up his own country, he has to place a phone call in order to continue and expound upon his failures. Trudeau invoked Emergency Act only after Biden administration urged Canada to use federal powers, because if there's somebody who knows a thing or two about overreach and can lend a helping hand, it's old Uncle Joe. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act for the first time in the country's history to crack down on protests against vaccine mandates, just days after the Biden administration urged him to use federal powers. Last Thursday, several Biden administration officials, including Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, when he wasn't, trying to breastfeed his kids. Is he still on paternity leave? Spoke to their counterparts in Canada as the protests closed the Ambassador Bridge. By Sunday, Canadian authorities had cleared the bridge. However, blockades continued into other ports of entry, which we're going to get to here in a second. Actually, they've been mostly just snuffed out. Not too sure about the one in Manitoba, but there was one in BC, Washington, right there at the border in Surrey, BC, which I've been to. It's very, very nice, but now it's just being infested with feds, and now that's over because now the police are moving in and they're just bringing their squad cars, and they're just sweeping up all the riffraff that's down there, all of those dangerous insurrectionists that are down there. Like you can see, a couple of jeeps and a whole bunch of Canadian flags, very dangerous. Okay, a la the FLQ or a la the Nazis. Oh wait, they're just in Ottawa. But I think we made mention to this one yesterday. I can't quite remember, but just for posterity's sake, there was the one of the initial protests that sprung up was down there, Coots, whatever, right there at the Alberta-US border, okay? That one got broken up after all of a sudden there was a whole bunch of hardware that was down there, okay? A bunch of firearms, a bunch of ammunition, tear gas, body armor. It just seemed completely out of sorts for any of these convoys, for any of these protests, because if you've been paying attention, like I'm sure most of you guys have, they are all peaceful. They're like nauseatingly love and peace. You just peer into some of these live streams and it's just nothing but we want freedom. It's just love and peace. There's just good energy in the air. If this was any other situation, it would just make me fucking want to vomit with all that hippie nonsense. But it's literally the definition of a peaceful fucking protest. So for there to just be a whole bunch of artillery there, I don't know, man. It really smelt bad. It just smelt off, if you're asking me. RCMP said they arrested 11 people at the Couts border crossing protest in southern Alberta. In a news release on February 14th, the Mountie said that they received information in the early morning that a small organized group within the larger Couts protest had access to a cache of firearms and ammunition. Once again, if you know a thing or two about Canadian politics over the past couple of years, that should have raised a bunch of red flags anyways. Officers conducted an investigation to evaluate the threat level before executing a search warrant. Okay, so you got information about a small organized group within the larger protest, and then you immediately got a search warrant? Interesting. The police searched 3 trailers believed to be linked to a small group. In total, 11 people were detained by the officers and 13 long guns, handguns, multiple sets of body armor, a machete, a large quantity of ammunition, and high-capacity magazines were seized. I don't know, man, but if you turn off them lights, you're going to see a couple of people glowing. Just saying. The Mounties added that a farm tractor and a semi-truck, both involved in the blockade, attempted to ram police vehicles on the night of February 13th. Well, if you were trying to, if you were worried about executing that search warrant, were you using your lights? Okay, were people aware that you were there? Maybe they were just trying to move their trucks, move their farm equipment, and they couldn't see you if you were doing this at night. Just theorizing that, even if it did happen, which I don't really know. Protest at Couts border started on January 29th. It was one of several demonstrations inspired by the convoy, but was never officially linked. But this whole 13 long guns, body armor, machete, large quantity of ammunition, high-capacity magazines, it's just fucking weird because this was something, okay? This was in May of 2020. There was this mass shooter, okay? Mass shooter in Nova Scotia, in fact. One of the most bloody, violent mass shootings in Canadian history. I think the most, okay? A lot of people died. 26 people died or something like that. And in response to this, Trudeau just decided to ban all the guns. Trudeau announces ban on 1,500 types of assault-style firearms because there's a quote down here which just physically makes me dumber every time that I read it. You don't need a deer to bring down, or you don't need an AR-15 to bring down a deer. See how many times I've read that? Can't even get it right. The term assault style has no legal definition in Canada, so it means literally anything. So which ones are being prohibited? M16s, AR-10s, AR-15 rifles, M4 carbines, Ruger Mini 14, a US rifle M14, VZ 58 rifle, CZ 858 rifle, Robinson Armament, XCR, CZ Scorpion Evo 3 carbine and pistol, Beretta CX4 Storm carbine, Sig Sauer SIG MCX and Sig Sauer SIG MPX carbines and pistols, and a Swiss Army Classic Green and Four Season Series rifle. So those have all been prohibited, right? But again, they found 13 long guns in one of these small little enclaves just outside of the main protest. Seems a little bit off. Could be, it could be one of those things. It could have totally happened that way. But again, this is all in response to this mass shooting, which we still don't have any information on. Okay? This is something that has rubbed me the wrong way for a long time because, yeah, it's terrible that a whole bunch of people died. Not going to dispute that. Okay, that's not for me to do. It was across the country. So it was apparently a lone gunman who received a whole bunch of very odd and covert payments from seemingly federal entities. But need not delve into that. But just Why is there literally no information in regards to this, even though there is cause for concern on that, because there's supposed to be a trial on that very, very shortly? Just a little bit on this, because like I said at the beginning, I tried to keep this short, but here we are just about at an hour again. Our relatives of victims killed in the mass shooting in Nova Scotia said that they're feeling deep discouragement with the public inquiry investigation, the horrific 2020 crime that claimed 26 lives, their law firm said. Okay, 22 people died, sorry, I oversold it a little bit, but many more people were injured as well. With 1 week left before the proceedings are set to begin in Halifax. This is accurate as of today, by the way, so a week from now. Patterson Law issued a statement late Monday saying its clients are worried their role in the inquiry will be unduly reduced, if not actively restricted, like many other details in this story. Nova Scotia law firm, which represents 23 families and individuals, said the delayed federal provincial inquiry has offered little information about the role witnesses will play in the proceedings. As well, Patterson Law says it's worried about the fact-finding portion of the inquiry, which will be truncated as a result of the delays, which means evidence before the inquiry may not be fully explored. I wonder why, because it ended up achieving its already stated goal. Trudeau got to ban the guns on something that he doesn't need to explain, because, well, he is in charge of all of the police now, at least for the next week, next 30 days. Cool. That's why there's cause for concerns for the protest proper, okay? Firearms may be planted in Ottawa to discredit protesters, according to the Convoy organizers, because they've seen it work in Coots, okay? That one just got evaporated overnight, okay? They brought in the cops, they brought in the feds, okay, to clean out BC. They did the same thing even before all this shit started in Ontario, right there at Windsor, okay? And there's one protest left. Just Ottawa is left. So how are they going to get the people that are still down there? Because you can tune in. There's still live streams going on right now. There's still people holding strong on this one. They're still holding the line. But how are they going to get them out of there? Well, they already tried to pin a fucking apartment arson on them. That didn't stick because you just take a look at the suspects that they're after. Some bald asshole wearing a mask and then somebody with purple hair. Real trucker supporters, I bet, my dude. And then these vague accusations of harassment or hate crimes. It's like, okay, but crime overall is down, and you can't pin anything specifically on the truckers now, can you? Okay, you filed an injunction to get them to stop honking. They stopped honking, and now you're making up laws in order to arrest them and declared their assembly illegal. Well, what are you going to do to get them out of there? I think they might be onto something here. Last but not least with this story. Organizers of the Freedom Convoy in Canada's capital say that they have notified police that they are being told that nefarious elements are planning to plant weapons at the Ottawa mandate demonstration as a pretext to forcibly remove peaceful protesters. In a video post on social media on February 14th, Daniel Bulford, a former RCMP officer who is helping the protesters organize with security, said that they have received information from sources they consider to be reliable that the weapons may be planted. The information, Bulford said, correlates to the more than 2,000 firearms that were stolen in Peterborough, Ontario, the morning of February 13th. I'm not really familiar with Ontario geography, but I know Peterborough is a part of the GTA area, and Ottawa is within a stone's throw. It's a couple hours drive from Toronto. I think that's where a big military base is anyways. So yeah, if they turn up there within the next couple of days, a big shock. Peterborough Police Services officers said that they are investigating the incident regarding the stolen firearms, which were taken from a trucking yard in the city in the early morning hours. Why were they just in a trucking yard? Another question. A lot of suspicion. A lot of questions we won't get answers from, at least from the federal government. The truck and trailer were carrying more than 2,000 firearms and magazines. Officials said no ammunition was taken. So just firearms and empty magazines. Okay. Today on February 14th, we received information from the multiple believed reliable sources that firearms may be planted in Ottawa, specifically around the Freedom Convoy, or Convoy rather, should be Convoy, to discredit the protest and use it as a pretext to forcibly remove peaceful protesters, because for 19 fucking days, they have been nothing short of exemplars. So how are you going to get them out of there? Well, you're just going to say what they're doing is illegal, okay? And then you don't have the support of the people. Literally, everybody is laughing at you right now, Trudeau. Everybody is discrediting you. premiers within your own country. So what would be politically expedient on this one? Well, all of a sudden I invoked this Emergencies Act to get rid of them, and then guns turn up? Well, they were in fact trying to overthrow our government the entire time, and I'm going to have to go ahead and make sure that these insurrectionists get squashed out because they've convened on Ottawa from all corners of the country. So I'm going to have to go ahead and invoke that Emergencies Act that gives me power over all of the country to make sure that none of these insurrectionists hurt anybody, because now that's my responsibility. Now I care about the entire country, not just Ontario and East. No. I need to make sure that these nefarious elements, I need to make sure that these awful people don't usurp the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I need to keep the most people in Canada safe as I possibly can. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of accusations that the younger Trudeau has been acting, a little bit like a certain political figure in 1930s Germany with his evocation of the Emergencies Act, saying that, this was just like when that man finally seized all the power that he needed in order to become the one true Führer of Germany. I wouldn't go that far. No. He's on the track. This is right now. This is his Reichstag fire moment. This is the point in time when he said that we need to invoke the Emergencies Act in order to keep people safe because there's a threat to the government. That's all he's talking about right now. So this is his Reichstag moment. And if there's guns that turn up in the next couple of days, he's going to have his justification to make these emergency temporary actions just the 7 days that he needs, or the 30 days to just flatten the insurrection, to make that permanent. I don't want to be fear-mongering on this one, but these are unprecedented times. These are frightening times. These are scary times. So I don't know where we go from here, but I know I'm going to be paying attention to it, and I'm sure you guys are as well. Let's move on to something completely different after this. Maybe Joe, maybe some lawsuits. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll figure it out here in a second. With that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.